All right, well, that was a really abrupt stop, but let's go ahead and get started. So, this is our second session of Brand Camp. First one was orientation, which Brandon spearheaded about a month ago, and that really set the roadmap for what we're planning to do this summer, which is Brand Camp. We'll have several different sessions throughout the summer. And really, what we're trying to do is help people understand the brand better, maybe fix some things that aren't working. And in this session, we will be talking about finding your brand's true north. And maybe you got a little lost, maybe you're off trail, or maybe you just need a little tune up. This is the perfect session. Brandon mentioned in orientation that the real risk is blending in. So I'm pretty sure we have some really good content today to help everyone not blend in and really embrace your true personality, your brand's personality. So, with that said, we have Brandon Waybright, our creative director, Rachel Getzinger, our design director, and the elusive Eric Desher. Oh, I like the balloons, Rachel. And Eric Desher, the VP of Creative Services. So, everyone knows we love a lively chat here at Pivot. Please just, I want it to be a constant stream of thought. Whatever you think during the next hour, just put it in here.
Mhm.
And that'll be a good way to ask questions. You can also use the Q&A button. We have that opened up as well. And that's a good option too if you want to ask a question anonymously. So if it's a deep question that you want to throw in, not have your name on it, we won't see your name. And we're happy to answer questions throughout or at the very end. Let's see what else. Last housekeeping thing is everything is recorded and posted to askpivot.com/brand camp. And I will put that in the chat. You can also find it on our homepage. Oh, amazing. So this will be recorded. All of these sessions are free for anyone to join. So if you have a coworker or your boss or you want someone else to listen to this, just send them the link. We'll try to get it up tomorrow. I think that's all I have for housekeeping. Unless you guys have anything else, I'll turn it over and I'll come back at the very end.
Works for me.
Cool.
Y'all good, Eric and Rachel?
Yeehaw.
Yeah.
Camp on.
Awesome. All right, folks. I am so excited about round two of this. What I wanted to do was very quickly just get us back on pace because it's been a little bit since session one. So we're not going to recap all the stuff, but we are going to give you a quick, like, okay, in case you missed it, here's what happened on the last episode of Brand Camp. I also wanted to point out Camp Snacks is an ongoing thing with Rachel and myself. If you didn't hear the first one, there's more coming. And the best place to find those is to go to Pivot's LinkedIn and follow us because it all happens live there. And then, of course, you can also find our podcast and the site that Dawn just mentioned where recordings will happen. But if you're there live, you can pester us and ask us even more things. So you can really, if you love taunting people, show up and do it. I dare you. But let's talk about what happened last time. Last time we talked about the greatest brand moment of the past decade and these beautiful animations to reveal it. The city of Los Angeles and how it showed some of the core of its brand and connected with people in a really thoughtful way. Then we contrasted that with probably one of the worst brand moments of the last decade in the Fire Festival that looked really great, but was basically just a large-scale lie that completely broke trust in relationships with people. And we recontextualized our conversation about brand as not something that's about logos or identities, but something that's about a shared adventure, something that is active, where an organization and an audience are traveling together because both of them are on a journey. Neither are stagnant. They're both moving. And we also talked about how audience is a much larger thing than we often talk about. It's not just customers. It's not just subscribers. It's not just volunteers. It's not just all those other things. It's whole group of everyone who comes into contact with the organization is a different portion of its audience. And each of them are worth paying attention to in different ways. We also, of course, looked at a map of moments in brand development from the trailhead where you take inventory to summiting Brand Mountain and the making of trail magic. We talked about so many things. We talked about how there are really key things to making a great brand, but you have to put them in the right spot. You don't want to get those kind of mixed up. It does matter to be consistent, distinctive, interactive, and story driven, but you don't want to have any one of those overpower the other ones, and you want to find the right moments for each of them because it's not something that you just do. We had exercises that we did. We had some really delightful fill in the blank moments where we could think about ways we could sharpen our own brand work and think about how we functionally and emotionally empower people or connect with people. And we did land, just as John said, in the idea that the real risk in branding is creating something that looks and sounds like everyone else. So when we look at brands and we look at what they're doing in the world, the thing that seems like it's professional is actually probably a proper risk. This is actually risky behavior. It's actually a really great opportunity. It is just awesome. It's a way to catch actual attention and get people to pay attention and notice your brand. This all was happening. And then over a couple weekends ago, I was also revisiting Seth Godin's from Permission Marketing and came across this statement. So in case the advice of one bald guy wasn't enough, I'm giving you another who thinks this. Because I really think there's something powerful about it. There's only two kinds of companies, brave and dead. Being brave as an organization is a really critical thing, finding your bravery and finding ways to embrace it. And we're going to actually talk about that because today is a session where we're going to need to really build bravery around our organizations and identify what kind of bravery can be helpful. Because getting lost is a moment when you need to be a little brave. And finding your way back also requires just as much bravery. So we are going to dive right into this today. We have kind of three segments here. We're going to add a little bit of layers onto what it means to find your true north as an organization, as a brand. We are then going to dive into what does it actually look like? How can you identify when you are lost? How do you know that you are lost? And then we're going to wrap up with, of course, one of the more important things, getting unlost once you've been lost. Three kind of segments. So one about just some more details of how you can really articulate a strong north, getting into what it might look like to get lost. And then finally, how we can start the road to recovery and finding our way back north again. Hopefully that sounds good. I'm super excited about this. And I'm really excited about some of the material we have today. I would say this would be like the moment where I'd be like, I can't hear you, but I can't hear you because you're not on mics. So you're just going to have to, I'm going to pretend I just heard raucous cheering and we're very excited for it. Let's talk about True North though. Because in the context of that brand trail that we talked about in the last session, we talked about True North, and the North Star is the thing that you're kind of hiking towards the whole time. It's the thing, particularly as we talked about Brand Mountain, that point where we're actually building brand elements and pieces of our brand. It's the thing that should be driving all that behavior. And if you remember Brand Mountain, you have all like the tools and the elements, the logos, the colors, the guidelines that you have. Then you have your values and communications, and you have performance, and you always trade up that mountain. If performing and living out your brand well requires messing with your logo a little bit, yeah, you do that. You make that trade because the top of the mountain is really powerful. It's not that it's not that the bottom isn't important. It's just that the top is where you really, really have a strong relationship. And you just know that. Like, there's a difference between a written value and the feeling of someone treating you a certain way. That's going to drive a strong, strong reaction from your audience. And ideally, all of these work together to head you towards that feeling as well. So the best situations where all of them are hitting on every level and they're all working together. But if you have to, you trade up that mountain. So I did want to just start today asking you, maybe you thought about this since the last session, or maybe this is the first time, and you don't have to overthink it. But if you are thinking about either your organization that you work for, or you can even do this as an individual. You can kind of make this exercise all about yourself. If you're like, I'm not ready to think about my organization, but I can think about myself. If you had one way that you wanted to make people feel, what would it be? And I would love it. People send some of those into the chat so we can see like what words come to mind. I love it, Carissa. Relieved, connection, awesome. Joyful. That does fit the razzle dazzle we saw earlier. Peaceful, nice. These are good feelings. I'm seeing feelings that definitely have like the feeling of like both a breath of fresh air, like the exhalation kind of moment, then also ones that are like the excitement, the blood is going moment. Those are seen. Ooh. Nice. Trustworthy. Love it. Rachel, Eric, what would you say if you had to do this?
Content, maybe.
Ooh.
I think about it with my kids, like I think safe.
Uh-huh. Oh, right as Robin wrote the same word.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I like that. I get a little in my head about feelings versus judgments because I do a lot of
Mm,
around like, and the first one I had, I also had seen in my mind and
mm,
feeling seen. There's a feeling underneath seen because seen is a perceived reality. So there is a judgment within that. So it's an experience. So I can get
nice.
into that.
Nice.
A lot of those weeds, but
Oh my gosh, I
I
love
was
it.
trying to pare down like what is the feeling behind seen or under that,
Yeah.
It's I don't know, maybe it's
Which is a great thing to start to deconstruct, like to look at like, okay, this is the first thing I thought. And then you'll ask yourself like, okay, is there an even more specific version of that? Or what are the moments that really feel like that?
hmm
To
yeah.
even more depth and specificity. It's really exciting.
hmm
I love this. Okay, so as you've thought about them, if you've shared them already, great. Hold those in your mind because we're going to actually come back to some of those words a little bit later. And if not, if you're still thinking through it, totally great. You can still think through it. You have a whole session. There's also a video, so you can come back anytime and get there. But some things to think about as you think about those feelings that you want people to experience and encounter. Those feelings are something that you do in the most ideal form, want to be a thing that connects between you and your audience and is different from what your audience feels with their competition. That's your most powerful one. Now, there's often a place where we're overlapping completely by competition and audience, but the most effective feeling is often one you're going to share with the audience uniquely in comparison to what your competition is doing. So that's one thing that I often ask. Like, as I have a feeling that I've articulated, I'll ask that of the thing I'm working on in a brand. Is this unique to their audience and them, or is it something that's going to create an overlap between all three of them? Can we find something that is uniquely theirs? Because that's that stage from going from like a good overlap to a great overlap, is that unique connection. So that's one just quick test. But the other thing I often ask myself as well as we're thinking about like brands and how we want to position them and where we want to place them is what kind of feelings really motivate people at the end of the day? Because there are feelings that are good. There's feelings that we want to feel. There are all kinds of things out there. There are so many feeling words out there. Also, it's just really fun to look up charts of feeling words. If you're nerdy like me, you get really excited about that. But there are so many interesting ones out there. But there are also feelings that are particularly powerful when it comes to like getting people motivated or encouraging them to act on their feelings. And particularly, we won't go deep into the psychology of this, but if you want to get really nerdy and find out a bunch of stuff, I would just encourage you to start researching self-determination theory, which is a really great, just a fairly accessible piece of psychology that lets you really think about what motivates human behavior in really great ways. Especially if you're a manager, I would check it out because it's really powerful in that context. But three kind of categories that you want to think about are particularly autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Is the feeling you want people to feel, is it connecting with anything there? Autonomy, of course, is having a choice, being able to be yourself, feeling like you have some sense of control or ability in a situation. You can see how like when you feel like you have autonomy somewhere, you suddenly feel empowered and you're more excited and you're usually more engaged. That's naturally true of most people. Also competence, feeling effective at what you do. And that's something that a lot of organizations tap into. They identify a place where people don't feel effective, but they want to feel effective, and they give them the ability to get there. That's a really powerful thing, to give people the experience of competence in something and a feeling attached to that. And of course, relatedness, feeling of connectedness to others, a sense of belonging, a sense that people understand you, they get you, you're seen, you're supported. Those three things are wildly powerful. And so again, another thing you can ask of your brand and the feeling you're trying to communicate, is it touching any of that? Sometimes it touches it very obviously. Sometimes it does it circuitously, and we'll actually look at some examples of that. But it is a really helpful thing to think because those are often your most powerful, most motivating, and honestly, the ones that make people feel best at the end of the day. So it's a good thing when a brand can encourage all of this in someone. And again, authentically encourage is really important. Just put that after everything we say today because you don't want to do this in an unauthentic way, which I would argue is unethical and really icky and certainly happens in the world. Don't do that. Don't be that company. It's a short-lived game and you will lose it eventually. Find the honest thing. Now, The other thing that people usually struggle with when we get into this feeling language, though, is to try to find, particularly around that authentic, what is authentically true of us? What can we honestly do as an organization and honestly create? And so there's a tool that can be really helpful for this. This is a brand new one. We've never shared it with Pivot before. But this also is based on some work by other creative directors, notably a person named Julian Cole. That's really worth checking out. But an emotional benefits ladder is a really great way. If you're an organization that really loves to live in the part where we describe what we do, we describe our services and our products a lot in our work. And our marketing has it, our brand even seems to emphasize it. This is a really great way to build towards the emotional value that you're offering from your services. So you start at the bottom of the ladder and you're climbing your way up, because that is naturally how you start with a ladder. At the very bottom, you can ask yourself, what does our product or service include? What are the actual features that we're offering? That's a really great start, because you're going to articulate something that's really there. From there, you can say, like, okay, what do those features allow people to do? That's the next rung of the ladder. What does this enable for the audience? What are they capable of because of that feature? That's a functional benefit, and that's going to be a little more powerful than just a description of the feature. You can describe all the technology of something, but people mostly won't understand it, and you're going to think you have to teach them. You don't. You just have to help them see how it makes their life better. That's a functional benefit. Now, if we get that functional benefit, we can move to the next rung up, which is, if they're able to do this, how will that make them feel? And so this is a really nice way to think about it, because it lands you in that authentic space. You start with something you literally do, you get to what it enables in someone's life and what that actually makes them feel when they're able to do it. It's a great way to make sure you do something authentic, something meaningful, and it gets you to that more powerful kind of statement and those ideas in a way that is genuine and not, like I said before, icky, manipulative, or gross. Those are professional terms that we really love to use, icky or gross. But let's just look at like how this would look for an organization that most people are aware of. Like if we took Peloton and broke it down in this way, they have features that they offer. There's a community board, there are metrics related to your exercise and performance, and there are high fives. Those are just features that are in there. They're things that you can do using the bike or using any of their devices, really. Those have a functional benefit. You know, you see the community board, which means you can actually see the community. They have metrics for your health and your performance, which means you can benchmark your health. You're able to do these things because of those features. That's exciting in itself, and also a lot more easy to understand. I'm more excited about benchmarking my health than someone saying, like, my bike gives me a high five. I don't know, maybe someone else is excited about that other one. The emotional benefit, if you can see the community, then you have this feeling that they can see you. And if you can benchmark your health and you can see your growth, then you also feel supported in this mission of growing your health and encouraging it. So that's seen and supported at the end of the day is an authentic feeling attached to the features that they generally offer. And the nice thing, I just put on the side those same things, that self-determination theory, the high motivation kind of impact. You can see how seen and supported plays really nicely into some of these categories. Like it very obviously hits on relatedness. It even hits onto competence and ability, because that support thing gets you there a little bit too. So some really nice stuff. And you can kind of play this game with, see how it works there, because it gets your mind going and you can kind of understand, okay, how could this look for us? Let's do this for us now. Let's ask those 3 questions. So again, a great tool, really, really helpful. I would definitely encourage you to do it for your organization and think through it and take the time to work on it, because it can get you some great spaces. Now, we hit on a little bit of what kind of feelings motivate, how can we build an actual like authentic feeling attached to our brand. The last thing I kind of wanted to say about True North, to add a layer to this, is that once you've got a feeling, once you've got an idea, once you've got something kind of developed, the best thing you can do is just to strongly, strongly embrace that feeling. Commit to it. Go for it, center it in all the stuff you do, and particularly center it when you are getting into your marketing side of things, when you're trying to promote yourself or get your attention. Because honestly, even having a fairly lukewarm, not super interesting feeling is really powerful when it's committed to boldly. Don't believe me? You should check out the Hans Brinker Budget Hotel. If this brand had a feeling, I would literally describe it as meh. The most non-committal feeling that you could possibly have. And also like a feeling that absolutely flies in the face of everything people think about how you should treat like the hospitality industry. But they just full on commit to it. And because they fully commit to it and never flinch from it, it actually works really well for them. It's incredibly powerful. It connects them with an audience that uniquely is interested in it, that becomes super fans of it, I am kind of in this audience a little bit, so I've also become a super fan. So now you know they exist because I was excited about what I saw. But that is the kind of thing, like that commitment is actually really powerful. So one of the reasons you want to find an authentic feeling that you generally can offer, one that motivates, and ideally one that motivates people, you want to find something authentic that you commit to, because if you really commit to it, then you can do some powerful work almost regardless of what the feeling actually is that you are genuinely creating. Of course, we could look at a typical example of this, like for sure in its industry, there is a unique feeling to Liquid Death that is completely different from everyone else in the industry, and they hold to it every single ad, every single piece, every single space. Everyone's kind of a rock star when it comes to using Liquid Death. But it doesn't have to be that aggressive. So it can be that kind of weird and ironic, and it can be that aggressive, but also like a feeling of humility is kind of powerful too when you fully commit to it. And maybe you've seen these ads before. They're, of course, a classic example. But I think there's something incredibly powerful. This is not a bold, like this bold feeling is not necessarily strong or aggressive. It's actually just a bold acceptance of their kind of humble place and their humble willingness to work. They will always, always, always take care of you. They'll always try harder because they have to. They're only second. And I love it so much. There's so much out there on this feeling. This is also, of course, the thing that runs behind, like that strong commitment is the thing that runs behind other powerful campaigns and powerful brand moments, such as, of course, Volkswagen and its Think Small campaign, which I think people often only see the one piece that says Think Small associated. There's a whole series of them, and they're worth looking at all of them, because the thing that's really powerful about this campaign is not just the minimalism of the thing. The thing that's really powerful is like when this was coming out, people wanted luxurious car experiences. Things were getting bigger. They were getting fancier. They were getting nicer. They were getting heavier. They're getting more powerful. And Volkswagen did the exact opposite of all of those things in their ads and promoted the opposite of it. The car that's light enough, you can at least push it if you run out of gas. A car that is 11, like they just fully embrace the idea that there's nothing fancy, nothing fluffy. You don't need to be excited. You just need to feel like you have the capability of doing whatever you need in your moment. Which is actually a competence thing. You don't have to feel overwhelmed by the luxury of this thing. You can just feel like this is something you can control on your own. Kind of amazing. So strongly encourage you. Brave, bold commitment to a genuine feeling is your most powerful route to great promotional material and a great brand. This is what I think really Seth Godin is saying, or Godin is saying, when he says there are two kinds of companies, brave and dead. It doesn't mean that they're all being aggressive, assertive, and really bombastic. It means they are unflinchingly committed to their core feeling and value that they have, and they're going to live it out every single day and find every moment to put it out there. That's, I think, the kind of bravery we're talking about here. Doesn't have to be aggressive. It can be very humble, but it just has to be committed. So a little bit about that north space. So we wanted to add some layers onto it. So it's not just about like, make a thing that feels good. It's also about find a thing that feels honest and find a thing that you really commit to. But that's not the only thing we're here to talk about today. And we're going to have some more questions for you, because we want to get into the spot where what happens when a brand sort of starts to lose its sense of north and takes a slightly different direction. What happens when we get lost? And how do we know if we get lost? So I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Eric, to talk a little bit about getting lost. Eric, our resident expert in getting lost.
Thanks for that. Well, Brandon will be back to talk about how we get unlost here in a little bit, but we thought we'd go through a few ways that we see clients and others getting lost periodically. But we wanted to start with an exercise, and would love for you to put the answer to this question in the chat. So what are some signs that might indicate a brand is lost, or even your brand? And maybe just throw a few of those into the chat for us.
This is like one of those delightful teacher moments where you just wait. Just wait. Ah, there we are.
I like
The
it.
dam broke.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Consistent. They haven't changed. Overthinking. Yes.
Oh, it's so
Messages.
Those are some good ones.
I think these are all true, and I'm also just like delighted and fascinated in the contradiction between inconsistency and also they haven't changed, which I think are both are genuinely true, just in different ways. Looks like someone else has brand Lauren picked Thorn.
Mhm.
We also can talk about like, I feel like there's also just like things that start to help you notice it, like an increase in negative comments or mentions. There's like literal things, there's tangible things too that can happen as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Or everyone's favorite, a steady decline in sales. Something's happened. Is it not necessarily a brand problem, I think, but it's a thing that could be a brand problem. Could be an indicator.
Well, these are some fantastic
Mm.
ones.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, we have a few that we'd like to share with you that we see periodically or even fairly regularly. There was a period of time not too long ago where I was trying to coin a phrase that failed miserably at Pivot, or actually a word. It was branding, and the idea was that branding and marketing should be aligned. That they should go together. That you shouldn't think of them as separate. You shouldn't have the branding work I do over here and the marketing work I do over here. So some of the things that we're going to run through, you will see our sort of marketing execution of how brands are executing when they put stuff out in the world. We have another exercise to keep your fingers on the keyboard, but we want to start by asking a question here and just say, like, what's wrong with these right here? Tell us what you think are wrong with the 4 examples that we're showing currently.
I love it.
Yeah, boring.
Yeah,
Love
boring.
it.
That's right.
Same colors. We are all the same. Yeah. Mhm.
Love these.
Lots to read.
So much blue.
Yeah, broadband is the industry of blue.
Yeah.
So we've actually seen what we put down in the chat here, which is just doing what everybody else is doing. And this is, if not the most common thing that we see, it's got to be up there pretty high. And so we want to talk about, well, how do you spot this issue when you're doing it? And I think one of the ways, and there's other ways to do this, but one way would just be to periodically ask the question, could another company or even one of my competitors put their name and logo on my work, and it would work equally well for them? And sometimes the answer is frightening. Sometimes the answer is yes, and certainly don't want that to be the case. All right, so we have another ones. Keep your fingers on the keyboard. What about this? What's wrong with these?
Hmm. I love Hey Fellow Kids. Yes, Trendy.
Hello, fellow kids.
Ooh.
Trying too hard.
Mm.
Gender braces. Creepy. Mhm.
Boy,
Icky.
There's the icky.
Icky
Good
came
job.
back.
Yes.
Oh
I think your answers are better than ours on this.
They are.
All I
Yeah,
see is
Also-
breath.
so good.
Also, cringe is like the exact answer that needed to be
Yeah.
said.
Yes. Yeah.
I will admit that I had to look up the word fleek to even figure out what it meant. So let me know if I'm the only one that didn't know what fleek meant. But what we have down is just trying to be something you're not, right? And we see this periodically where I think one of the things was, hey kids, Hello, fellow kids. Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes we just see where we're trying too hard. And one way to spot how we might be lost in this would be to periodically ask the question, uh, would our team sound like this when they're talking one-on-one with the customer? You know, when they're having a one-on-one chat, would they actually sound like this? Or would most of our customers describe us as being this way or having this personality? And I think you ask questions like that that maybe Motor Trend and Hamburger Helper may not have gone down a road like this. So yeah, so the next one.
This is another way of losing who you are, right? And also trying to be someone you're not. And as you can see here, there's a lot of branding on this page, you know, that looks very much the same. And you can't tell if it's like the next best coffee or whiskey or whatever, right? And this is, you know, coming from not having a clearly defined like true north, right? It's also a posture that leaves you chasing and is absolutely exhausting, right? You're just like trying to always be on the lookout, and I talk a lot about posture in my work and with my team, but man, that it's reactive. And that's not a place of confidence and of knowing who you are. So it can look very much like a forgery when you're working and trying to copy others without a sense of purpose. Whereas when Nike does it, cue next slide, they come across as refreshed and on trend because they are putting their own spin on it, and it's coming from a place of purpose. So they're defining their own space and pushing these trends farther instead of just reacting and copying. Because at the end of the day, I don't want us to hear like our brands have to be so consistent and we shouldn't be flexible within our visuals or within our tone of voice, right? Nike can do it, and they do it well because they have such a strong foundation of who they are and that feeling and that point of view that they have in the world. Which
Yeah,
everybody
that
can
just
see, right?
that like solidified a thought that I had where it's like, yeah, it's not saying avoid what is happening and it's new in the world. Don't avoid the young audience in the thing.
Yeah.
But like actually just be yourself talking to that audience. Don't try to be that audience talking to that audience.
Yes, and that's why bruh sounded so bad.
Yeah.
They were trying to be that audience instead of, relate to and put their own spin on it.
All right, so another one here. What is wrong with this? What is wrong with these?
Oh man.
Everything.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I love everything. That's fantastic.
It makes me think of like my design professor of just like your first 10 ideas are terrible. Yeah.
Somebody recently got Photoshop and they found a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That is kind of awesome to think about, like views of that fast internet computer experience, and like that is not how I want to look on my Zoom call. Oh my gosh, I love that.
All right, so what we have down is doing the expected. This tends to be more of an internal issue than an external. So we've been talking about some things that are more external, where you can look at what you're putting out in the world. This one's mostly an internal issue. And a couple questions we might ask when we're to help spot something like this is, who am I putting my ads together for? If I'm putting them together to satisfy the interests of people on my staff more than I'm putting them together for customers, that might be doing the expected. Another way to look at these might be, would seeing a fiber strand or another person flying off their chair attract my attention if I received this ad in my mailbox? And I think most of us would say no, that would go right in the recycling bin. So doing the expected is one other way that we might get lost.
Mm-hmm. I also really now I'm realizing, like, asking myself, do I want to feel like that person does who's gripping the desk? I don't think I do.
Yeah, there's an injury right
That's
around
the
the corner.
feeling you want.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's not the feeling. Yeah, another internal challenge is when you start letting your own gut, right, where you think we should be going, or company should be going, or visual should be going, or what you like or dislike, run the whole show. And it might not be you, it might be death by committee. You might have a great idea that you're running through your team, and it starts slowly dying by everybody's likes or dislikes, what they lean towards or away from. And all of a sudden, at the end of this like line of edits, we have just a really safe choice that, you know, is the result of drawing your own map. Something, again, kind of reflecting back on school here, is one of my professors was like, it doesn't matter if you like it, it matters if it works. You might not be that audience that you're speaking to. And internally, another like symptom of this, it can feel a little bit like whiplash, right? Your visuals can look like whiplash, you know, feel like whiplash out in the wild, or like, oh, or no, I don't like that, or oh, I don't like that, and oh, okay, we're on to V7. It's like, it's kind of feels chaotic living in that space. And in the end, the hard thing to hear is that you or one person, or just a like or dislike, or an unfounded like bias, or like gut, I guess, check, is not the sum of your company's point of view or feeling. That it is broader than that. And when you don't have one way you're all going together, the most natural thing for a team to do is to come to the table with their own maps and in their own intuitions, because that is what has got them there so far. So create something we can all focus on together outside of ourselves, and we will have a much more cohesive experience.
So hopefully you guys are seeing some things, some points in here where you've gone, oh yeah, that's my organization. I'd like to take a quick check here in the chat and just give me a yes or no. A yes if you've seen yourself in any of these examples so far as potentially getting lost. So far, we're 3 for 3.
Right. I feel like this is such a good honesty check though, too, because like, I don't know that there's an organization that doesn't have a struggle with one of these at least. And usually both. Like, even the last one you were just saying, I'm like, we live it out every day internally. When we're trying to give feedback to fellow designers, we're like, often it's so tempting to be like, oh, I like that. And at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter if I like it. It matters if it connects with the audience in the way that's meaningful for that brand. And
That's
I'm not
the reason why
audience.
that phrase has stuck with me. Because at the end of the day, like, why wouldn't I design something I also like, that I also feel proud of? And then I'm like, oh no, where is my self-worth? I am not this bad. And then I have to go unpack that. Yeah.
Well, another one here is letting workflow determine output. And this one here can be difficult to spot sometimes because most of the time we're busy people. And so sometimes we end up taking shortcuts in the way we operate in order to just get stuff out the door. And so sometimes we will start by skipping some steps. So one way we might recognize when we're doing this is if we're starting by going, what is our offer for this month? Or what is, or what should the headline be? We're not starting by asking the questions that we should as marketers, like, who are we talking to? Let's make sure we've we've answered sort of the marketing 101 questions. Who are we talking to? What do they respond to? But we start automatically with, well, what should the offer be? What should the headline be? And sometimes those shortcuts can create work that ends up looking the same over and over and over again. And so what we would ask here is just asking those questions like, can I start by just determining like just again those marketing 101 questions, and those can often help us get out of the workflow challenge into some greater work.
Mm-hmm.
I like asking the question, how and what I'm working on, how is what I'm making or putting out into the world inviting and delighting versus like selling or telling. I also think that a way I see this happen is getting stuck in the algorithms, like making for the sake of how much content I need to generate. Like it can become something that's a good goal, but it also can like rule you depending on your posture towards it. You can just be so busy churning things out that it then becomes meaningless, or you can get so stuck in like how many celebrities you need per second per X number of target audiences you need to capture during X Super Bowl commercials, and then have just a wash of commercials that feel kind of oddly the same at the end of it because they're following, they're letting the workflow or the analytics or the data really determine actually what's being made.
One place we see this is with different services. We'll see internet advertise the same way as maybe security systems advertise similarly to like a hosted PBX product. And we're using the same tactics for all of them and sort of on repeat with those. And there's different buying cycles for things like that. The motivations, the ability to pick up and buy or subscribe to a product is different for those. But sometimes you tend to just, because, and like I said, we're all busy. So this becomes sometimes a natural shortcut, but it is something that ends up producing kind of the sameness of the work.
This also created another thought that we haven't even talked about, but there's a phrase that has always really mattered to me, like in my own life, which is when first things are put first, second things are enhanced. And what I see in this phrase and the way things you might hear if the workflow determining your output is starting to happen, you might hear at the start of a project, oh, we don't have time. Oh, or we need to do this really efficiently. Or we might even just start by like an assumption. The first thing you might hear is like, okay, what postcard are we making? All of those are assumptions that are happening, and they're trying to drive efficiency. Efficiency matters for an organization, but it needs to be held thoughtfully in balance with really compelling ideas and communication and interaction. Those both need to work together. Efficiency, if it is your starting point, will rarely lead you to effective communication. You need to find the effective communication so you can gain efficiency. So you got to get that first thing in first. And that doesn't mean efficiency is less important. It just means it's going to be more powerful when you get it. Just imagine, let's just think if like our campaign that we're trying to do, we're trying to target Gen Z with a campaign. And imagine that your first question is, what postcard are we going to make? Wrong thought, wasted time, loss of efficiency. You want to start with the idea and what you're trying to communicate and how you connect to them. Then you can ask yourself the question, how do we do this efficiently? But you need to have the time to actually have a compelling thought. Otherwise, you're going to waste time. Humorously, if you start with efficiency, you lose efficiency.
Great point.
Another internal challenge here is when your team isn't moving together, when people are afraid to move, right? And this is a dangerous place to be in. It can take your daily hike and turn it into like the Survivor reality TV show. And it can be the result of a lot of things. Could be a lack of defined culture, bad culture, poor vision casting or leadership. Like we don't know where we're going or our goals are for a company. Lack of autonomy or responsibility within teams. The people are too afraid to move or like give their gifts to the work. with, yeah, let's see. Oh, one thing I really wanted to make sure I said here was 90% of expeditions, when they fail, they're failing on the way home. It's after the point, like the North Pole's been reached, right? The destination has been acquired. And so if you lose that one thing your team is striving for together and the purpose has been lost, that's the danger zone. So that's one reason like that True North can also help so much internally for teams and not just what your marketing efforts look like externally, but how you live them out every day.
Love it.
Mm.
Well, I do want to pause really quickly, both for us to have a chance to just breathe, but also in case there are any questions that have already kind of bubbled to the surface for you all. You can feel free to share it. Otherwise, we're just going to buy ourselves a moment to say,
Yes, that was a lot of content.
it's a lot of stuff. There's so much. There's so much about brand to share and to learn, to argue about if we wanted to, which is also really fun.
The making of this presentation.
Yeah. I just want to tell you all, if you have 3 people who care a lot about brand and they disagree by like 0.5%, they will talk about that 0.5% endlessly. It's great. All right. I think we gave a little bit of time there. Y'all feeling okay? Let me know, chat folks. Oh, there's a lot of yeses already, so I'm just I also think that goes with
We're
good.
Good.
Thank you, Kim. Well, our next one, the disagree would be a delightful thing. Y'all should listen to us argue. It's pretty fun. There are a handful of insults that regularly come up, and it's pretty delightful. At least for me. Okay. We don't want to end with just living in here's all the ways you might be lost. I hope you all feel bad because you've gotten lost. Now, we also do care about how do we get back out if we are lost. And I think it's really important. The notion that goes through all of those, whether it's visual ways in our brand that we've gotten lost, or whether it's internal practices or processes, or whether it's ways we communicate, all those moments that could lead us to being lost. All of those are examples of points where we start to lose the feeling, we lose the point of view, we lose the thing that we were trying to get. But I do want to reiterate, getting lost itself is not actually a bad thing on its own. Staying lost is the real problem you want to avoid. Like if you never get lost, what it means is you've never actually stepped foot outside your door. You've never gone to a new space. And if you never go to a new space as an organization, you know that eventually that's going to be a problem for you. So you do need to be brave enough to be willing to get lost, but you need to have a strong enough identity, a strong enough understanding of what that true north is so that you can get back. Because I really do think it's true. If you've never been lost, it just means you never have explored. Lost is your opportunity for growth. And as you get back out of it, like think about it, anytime you've gone anywhere, most people have been lost somewhere in their life. That moment where you're lost feels terrible. But it also becomes the story you tell that reminds you of who you are, that reminds you of something else. It's the most powerful moment for many people when they have a story where they were lost and they found their way back. So you need to find your way back because it's going to be the best thing for your organization. You just don't want to be afraid of it. You just want to know that you're capable. If you get lost, you can find your way back. That's the thing you really want as an organization. No, so let's just look at 2 examples. 2 examples of organizations that navigated a territory where they could have gotten lost. They went somewhere new. One of them that did it really well, one of them that did it really poorly. We did this last time with Fire Festival and the craft and Los Angeles City. Now we're going to look at a couple other examples. So let's take an example that I know particularly Eric has talked about a lot at our organization, Dove, a brand that focuses on real beauty, that's been working to help people see themselves honestly and positively for years at this point. It wants people to feel comfortable and find beauty in their own skin. That's probably the easiest way to say like the heart of their campaign. Now let's just imagine that in this world where we live, they decided they want to make a bunch of AI image ads with tools that they have today. AI is huge. People are excited about it. They want to gain the efficiency of generating stuff and putting it out in the world. Almost every company is talking about that. Now just imagine how that jives with the idea of we want people to feel authentically comfortable in their own skin. And we have these AI generated people. That doesn't seem to work. So guess what Dove did? They didn't do it. They didn't go that way. I'm not going to play this whole ad, but I honestly would encourage you to go check out what Dove has been doing around AI, because it's powerful.
Take a look and you see into your imagination.
So we could watch this for a long time, but it's powerful. There's a whole page dedicated to it on Dove's site that I really encourage you to check out because it's a great response. So they looked at this. They decided we're not going to ignore AI as a thing in the world. We're not going to run away from it. That doesn't seem reasonable. It's too present to not talk about it, to not address it, to not do something. But they started with their true north, their true statement, and they had an opinion. They had their own spin on it. And they made a powerful claim. Like, that quote is directly off their site. They made that public claim. We're committing to never using AI to create or distort women's images. Instead of just using it, they're going to actually work on retraining it to be better in general. And until it is better, they're not using it for their work other than to comment on it. It's kind of amazing. It's a powerful statement. It is kind of counter industry, and it totally connects with who they are. That sense of feeling comfortable in your authentic own skin in all its diversity and glory. That is incredible, I think. So that's a really nice example of addressing something, being relevant, going to a space where a lot of people can get lost, but finding and holding to what keeps you focused. Now let's talk about the other side, because we did already talk about Peloton once. And I always want to bring them back because it's fun to poke at Peloton a little bit at this point in time. But if we kind of summarize some of the things we talked about before, where I did that emotional benefits ladder, like a way of understanding what community supported personal strength. Now that is really powerful because particularly Peloton kind of exists in the same ecosystem as diet programs and self-improvement happens for people. And the idea of community supported is different in that space, at least especially at that time, was a very different move. It separated them from that. So they did find something that really mattered. Now, there's a couple things that happened here that got them lost. One, the brand as a whole has kind of lost a lot of ground. And part of that is just that they didn't recognize that their audience moved. They stayed in the same place while the audience was traveling. See, Peloton was super powerful in a pandemic when people felt disconnected. They wanted a digital community to support them, to encourage them. They wanted the feeling of competition because they weren't even seeing that happen. They weren't able to watch their sports and get that feeling too. But the fact is that, like, people have moved on since that period. Now they're gathering in person again. They don't want a digital community quite in the same way, or at least the same kind of digital community that they had then. They want a different kind. They also want a different kind of in-person community. So they lost ground in that space, and they didn't realize it because they held to the same thing, but they didn't understand that their audience was moving. So there are some times when you can hold to something, but you also have to watch, is your audience holding to it with you? Because sometimes the answer is they're moving. What's true of us today, still as our audience moves, what's true of us between us two, so that we can hold on to. Now they also made some flubs though. We gotta just own that. They did. It's not just that the community moved. It's also that from that true statement, that true feeling. If you watched Dove a couple Christmases ago, you might have seen an ad that's called "The Gift That Gives Back," which we can just really deconstruct why that was a terrible title for that. But it's this ad, and you're not going to be able to hear it very well. But
Excited. Let's do this. 5 days in a row. You surprised? I am.
I'm not going to play this whole thing. I don't want to give it the time of day. Go watch it online if you want. Here's what's wrong with that ad in a very simple form. There's a lot of things we could pick apart, but here's the thing. They took what was community-supported personal strength, and it became husband-pushed personal strength. The husband gave her this bike, and she terrifiedly tried to use it and weirdly recorded herself and then made them watch a video while they sat together. It just feels like she's like locked into a scary relationship the whole time. They lost so much ground in that space. And part of it is that they really just forgot about the whole community. There's nothing in community there. There's like 500 simple adjustments they could have made to that ad to make it better. but they didn't. They forgot to. They forgot to ask them that question of how disinterest. And you can totally see how an ad like this could run through people and get out the door. They got excited. They thought, oh, it's really cute. And they probably even thought like, oh, it's really great. She's succeeding, and didn't realize it. This is wonderful. But they never asked their question like, how does this help show that a community is surrounding you, that you are seeing, that you are part of something, and that it's your choice. It's personal strength, not someone else telling you that.
Yeah.
That's a whole bunch of stuff right there. So that's why like you always got to keep asking these questions. What is our true north? And start from there. Or if you have an idea, ask yourself, does it fit to that? Does it still tell that story? Or are there edits or changes we need to make to really connect with that still? Because literally just one voice in the room should have been able to help them identify that before it went out the door. They missed it. And it's all about asking the right question and being willing to ask that question. I suppose we're not going there today, but also creating a work environment where it's okay to ask that question is also very important, where it's okay to, because it will help the organization not make a big flub if it's okay to bring up that problem. So what do we do though? Because we have one example of people getting it right, one example of people getting it, but in our own brands, if your organization is doing what it should do, at some point it should get lost. It should make a misstep. It should be doing something new enough, difficult enough, challenging enough that there is something that doesn't go quite the way you expected. What do you do in that situation? We can actually literally use the things that you might want to do when you're lost in the environment to help a brand as well. You want to stop and assess. You want to get your bearings, figure out where you actually are. And then you want to make yourself visible so you're really easy to find so you can see your way back, or so that someone can help see your way back even better. So let's just talk about what that looks like for an organization. Stopping and assessing. The most important thing you can do when a brand is getting lost is to be able to name the situation really clearly and understand it really clearly. What is the problem that you are encountering? What is the problem you are facing? If you can describe the problem, you can actually typically address the problem. It's when you can't admit it, when you can't describe it, when you can't put it into words, that's when you're usually floundering a little bit. And this is also really important for that question that we had in our first session, where it's like, how do we help other people go with us on this? How do we convince people to go? Let's just think about a situation where people are lost and someone walks up to that group and says, hey, let's keep moving. Not the most compelling reason to ever address any to get unlost. It becomes basically just a game of like, do you trust me enough to think we need to keep moving? And that is not a very powerful claim, unless you just have a ton of clout, and some people do, and that's a thing, and you should use that wisely. But if you are on the right-hand side of this, you can see how a situation that's described like this is going to motivate people to move. Like, hey, we could stay right here where we are lost because we're worried, but we only have one day worth of food, and it's going to take at least that much time to hike out. And maybe we're in a bear den, so this could get pretty dangerous. One of those, if they choose not to leave, it's on them. You gave them the situation, and they should have seen it. If they're not willing to see it, that's a whole different problem. But I find that this happens a lot of times when we get into like brand conversations, because we want to come in and say something like, we need to be more modern, which is the same thing as just saying like, we need to keep moving. It requires people to just say like, oh yeah, we trust you. You have enough clout that we'll just do it. Whereas on the right, we have like, this is a way we might describe a unique situation that demands we do something. Since our last brand project, we've had a pandemic, a huge demographic shift, fresh competition coming to us, new businesses in town. There's a bunch of these obnoxious millennial types that are wannabe farmers who don't love talking on the phone, and they don't seem to be signing up. Like, there's a situation that we need to address. Assess the problem, describe it in detail. And of course, that's just one situation. There's all kinds of indicators. Describe the problem. It will not only motivate people to address the problem, it will also help you figure out how do you move forward? Okay, let's break this apart and take it one piece at a time. How do we fix each of these things to really reconnect? That is super important, the practice of stopping and assessing and describing. Now, the other thing I wanted to say and share, and I know we're right up at this piece of getting your bearings is really critical. So there's a piece of this that is about, understanding who you are, understanding the feeling you want to create. Because when you are getting lost, you are creating the feelings you don't want to create. But you need more than just a feeling. You also need a point of view on the world that really solidifies that feeling. So your bearings are not just where is north. It's also, do I have a point of view? Do I have a vantage point where I can see the landscape in front of me and understand what's there? And to us, in a brand, that is a point of view statement. It's a claim about why that feeling matters, why you believe that really is critical. This is a foundational thing. So if I take an example that I talk about way too much, but it's also just so simple and easy to point to, we can talk about Subaru. Subaru's core feeling, everyone has come across it for decades at this point, right? We're probably almost getting tired of it. They probably do need to consider if there's things that they need to start doing for new layers, but it's working well still. But Subaru's core feeling is love. But it's not just showing signs of love that matters to them. Like a point of view that relates to that is love is the only thing that matters at the end of the day. Now, the important thing about a point of view statement is it does need to be something that is somebody could disagree about. Now, it doesn't mean everyone will disagree about it. So oftentimes they're so true that everyone's like, yeah, I'll assent to that. But you want it to be a claim. Like somebody could say, yeah, no, love isn't actually the most important thing. This is the most important thing in the world. But a strong point of view is something that is able to be disagreed with in its structure. You should have that quality. And notice just that, like, the Subaru point of view here also fits really well with that self-determination theory. Love being really a strong sense of relatedness is in there. There's a sense of autonomy. If you are loved, you're capable of new things. There's really great connections there. You also, by the way, can do this on a personal level. So I'm sharing my own one because I've actually do these exercises just on who I am and how I want to interact with people. On a personal level, like the feeling I'd love to always encourage in people and create for people is curiosity. I want people to be curious about something. My point of view on the world, and this is for sure my point of view, is that curiosity is the only thing that leads to growth, change, and relationship between folks. Now, people could disagree with that, and I'm certain like Brene Brown probably has a much more articulate and a different kind of point of view in the world, but it's not her. I don't have her point of view. I have my own one. So you can see how like there's a feeling, and then there's a reason that feeling matters to you, a reason that feeling exists. If you can describe those things, then what you have is this really great moment where you have better questions to ask of your ads, better questions to ask of your moments where you're talking with people, better questions that you can start to use to stimulate better brand moments. So if love is the only thing that matters at the end of the day, the thing you need to always ask at the front of a project, what is the connection between love and a car for the audience I have today? What's that connection? How do I show that? You know? Or on my level, what can we do to encourage curiosity in the group of people I get to interact with today? What is the thing that we want to do there? And I'll just point out, like, one of the things that you're seeing here in the way we've kind of structured this and even a running brand camp is a part of that. Like, we're not giving you a 10-step program to rebuild your brand, to just follow these steps, do these exact things. We're trying to give you questions that you can ask because we want you to be thinking and curious about your organization and what it could be. So this is literally just another example of playing out a value. I didn't lead with curiosity, but certainly curiosity is a hope and a desire for every organization that's looking at this and working through this kind of thing. Okay. We're totally over, and I don't fault you if we've taken too much of your time, but I will throw this out there because we want to give you your full non-money's. The last thing you need to do is you're doing this internal work, and you need to do it internally. You need to understand why you're lost, and you need to re-articulate your true north, but then you need to actually make it visible. You need to actually make it something that you can see. And it is helpful to do it in that order. Do it internally, then make it visible. That's probably the most powerful way to work. And on the make it visible side of things, we can actually just navigate some basic crisis management. How do you make it visible when you're addressing a problem? First thing is just be present there. Don't run away from the problem. Describe the problem, be present in it. Go where the issue is. When you see a problem, go to it. Connect with it, understand it. The other side is own that problem. Own the thing that has gone wrong. This is really actually great to think. A lot of people want to look at that like organizationally. Oh, there was this crisis with my organization. We're going to own it as an organization. It's also really important internally. Like if you come at your conversation and I go up to Eric and I'm like, you got the brand wrong over here. That's obnoxious. But if I'm like, hey, we are doing something that I think is going to be a problem. That is a different point of view. We're not pointing a finger. We are part of the thing, and we're going to work on it together. That is totally different feeling of addressing those issues. And of course, listening. When you hear that there's a problem, when you see that you just don't see it, actually trust that they have something to share. Try to hear from that perspective because, yeah, every perspective has something there. The thing you want to check yourself is if you start to hear feedback and your response is, well, they're wrong. They don't see that. They don't know what's going on over there. Like, no, you're probably missing something. You want to make sure you're listening. And then, of course, act. This is something that's very important. And it does come with a balance. If you find yourself getting lost, you want to act quickly. You don't want to act rash. You do want to be thoughtful about it, But the longer you stay lost, the longer you cultivate a groove in one direction and go that way, the farther and the worse things can get. So you do want to work quickly. It's something to address quickly, but mindfully and intentionally. So don't act rashly, but do act as quickly as you can while being thoughtful. And of course, the last part is grow. If you found that you are lost, you should take the moment, you want to get unlost, and you want to reflect on the whole process. What happened to get you there? Why was it such a problem? What did you do in response? What new commitments can you make? Those are the stuff that are going to make your brand super powerful in the end. That's that reflection, that growth is going to be the thing that makes your brand even better. And every brand that has gone through a trauma or a trial, and this is also true of like customer service and all those moments, everyone that goes through that challenge and tighter bonds. So again, it's like, it's not that getting lost is a problem. It's just that if you stay there and you keep going the same way and getting more lost, that's a problem. Getting back can actually build even stronger brands, build even stronger bonds, stronger commitments, and stronger ideas. Now, let me just show one last moment, and then we're going to be wrapping it up right here because this is the end of the whole thing. I want to go back to Volkswagen because we could talk about this on a crisis management level, but we can also talk about this on just like a marketing perspective, opinion level. There's a really nice moment that happened more recently for Volkswagen. You seem a little outdated. Quite literally, what they found is that parents thought of Volkswagen as old, and they didn't like that feeling that Volkswagen was old because as parents, they were starting to feel old. And that wasn't a great overlap. So what could Volkswagen do? They could have been like, no, 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 we're a great vehicle. And what's really interesting is like they couldn't also just say we're not old because there's a whole segment of their market of people who love Volkswagen that love them specifically because they see them as like classic, retro, and old. That van life community thinks of the like of this van in particular is a very awesome element. So they can't just deny that and let go of a whole piece of their brand. So instead, they decided not to deny it. Instead, they said like, yes, we are old, you are old, but it's awesome. And that's kind of really amazing. Instead of changing who they are, they doubled down and said like, no, the problem here is actually that you just feel bad about it. Let's get excited about this phase of life instead. Let's talk about from that perspective. Let's be the awesomest older parents that we can be. And I think it's delightful to see that. Also, the really nice thing is like, this is such a good example. This is the same brand voice, the same tone they took in those early ads where they were saying think small, where they were talking about the things that seemed like problems and made them positive. They kept that same north. And they just found a new way of saying it to another audience. Sounds like the same organization, has a new statement to make, and it's kind of delightful. So that's something to look for. How can you hold to your true north? How can you find ways to reconstitute the problem? And when you are lost, don't feel like lost is the bad thing. Be excited about the opportunity to grow a really strong bond with your community. So we have definitely run out of time. I did want to throw something out, and I'm sorry that we ran long because there is something that I think is really important. For those of you who are here today, we know this work can be really hard. This can be really challenging to do. And so we wanted to offer for everyone who is still around, and you know, if someone watches this video, they can call us up on it too. But for those who are participating in Brand Camp, if you want to have us take a look at your unique situation, we'll get some of our brand experts, maybe myself, Rachel, and or Eric on that call to look at your unique elements and your pieces. We are happy to do that for free with you. There is no commitment to that. You don't have to pay anything. You just basically have to email Dawn. And Dawn will get you to the right people to set it up. Completely free, no strings attached to it. We're happy to do it. Now, that will give you like a live, in the moment, you bring your materials, we give you what we see initially on it. But there's also a lot of situations where there's just more. Like we need to look more thoroughly. Or maybe you're in a situation where there's people who your brand has some opportunities or things they need to do. So for that, we are offering a True North review. That includes a discovery session. So we'll meet with you. We'll be happy to share with you. It will involve reviewing your material, so we'll do it more in depth. We'll also put together a literal strategy statement. Where could you go? What could you build? What are some great opportunities for you to connect with your audience? And a short action plan. What are the first steps you can take to really make this happen for you? Finally, all that comes in a documented PowerPoint, the kind of thing that you could walk right over to whoever you need to talk to say, like, here's what we need to do for our brand to help us get into a really powerful space for the future. So we have that available. And again, you can write for Dawn. But for those of you who are in Brand Camp, we also want to knock that down because we want to make it easy for you. So if that's something you're really interested in, you think it could be helpful for your organization, and that's hopefully why you'd want it. We don't want to there is no hard sell here. You do not have to do this, but we would love to make it available and easy for you to approach if you can. So we'll knock 25% off of it. And we're going to do one more step because we know that often what happens is you find opportunities for your brand and then you want to commit to brand work and you don't want to double up and increase your expenses. So should you, as a result of that review, decide that you want to do a brand project with us, which again, you don't have to. You can just do that review, take it and say, like, we can address this with our own team. Let's just go and run with it. That's fine. But if you choose to work on a brand project with us as a result of that, we will then credit that right back to the brand project that we quoted you. So that is all available for you. And we will hold to that for the duration of Brand Camp. So between now and August, if that's something you want to take advantage of, all you got to do is email Dawn at askpivot.com, tell her what you were interested in, she will get you to the right people. And that's about as salesy as I'm willing to get today. But again, we just literally think these could be helpful and we want to make them as available as possible to you with as little commitment as you would need to make to do it.
That was a lot of good stuff. Oh, I'm glad you have this slide because all I was going to say is thank you for joining. I put a link to Brand Camp in the chat. That has all of the camp snack sessions, which there will be several between now and the end of summer. So RSVP to those. And then, yeah, we have some fun things happening, podcast, webinar, video, all that fun stuff you can find on the Brand Camp landing page. And like I said, this recording will be sent out in the next few business days. So feel free to revisit, share with whoever you want, listen, in your free time, all that good stuff. Any final words, crew?
Yeah, I do. I have one final thing. I feel like just to acknowledge that it's a really brave thing to say internally, hey, I think we're lost. I think that's the first brave thing. That if you're feeling lost and you're witnessing a few places of growth for your company after this or through this webinar, we got you. We're with you. We can be with you to say that because I think that's an intrepid thing to do. That's all.
Mic drop. That's a perfect note to end on.
Go be brave.
Yes.
Go be brave. Thank you for spending time with us, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.